Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into Genesis chapter 21 today.
Oh, this is a good one.
It's packed with drama, divine intervention, and even a well that ends up meaning way more than you'd think.
Right. You've got the birth of Isaac, Hagar, and Ishmael's banishment.
And this crucial covenant between Abraham and Abimelech.
Yeah, it really sets up a lot of what unfolds later.
Exactly. So let's get right to it. We start with Isaac's arrival.
Huge moment for Abraham and Sarah.
Definitely years of waiting. A miracle baby.
Fulfilling God's promise, too. Not just a personal joy, but, well, this is the lineage, the beginning of the Israelite people.
Wow, when you put it that way, this tiny baby is carrying generations on his shoulders.
It's a lot of pressure.
But then, alongside that joy, Sarah gets worried.
Yeah, Ishmael.
Abraham's son with Hagar, she sees him as a threat to Isaac's inheritance.
I can't imagine what Abraham must felt. Torn between his sons, his faith.
Such a tough situation. And the story doesn't shy away from how hard it is, does it?
Nope, it's right there. Sarah's scared, but that fear leads to some serious consequences.
Makes you think about the ripple effects of fear, even if it comes from wanting to protect someone you love.
Definitely. How do we deal with fear? How do our needs balance with the needs of others?
Heavy stuff. And God tells Abraham to go along with Sarah's wish. I mean, how do you even process that?
God does promise that Ishmael will also become a great nation.
Right, so there's that reassurance. It shows God's faithfulness to his promises, even when things seem contradictory.
Like God's plan is bigger than we can grasp. Blessings for multiple lineages, not just one chosen line.
So Abraham sends Hagar and Ishmael away. Bread and water, that's it. Can you imagine?
Walking into the wilderness like that. Terrifying. The text doesn't say what Hagar was thinking, but
You can feel her desperation, right?
when the water runs out and she puts Ishmael under that shrub, heartbreaking.
It's raw. It's a mother's love, just pure anguish. Anyone who's ever felt that fierce protectiveness of a parent, they'll get it.
And that's when God steps in.
Divine intervention time.
He hears Ishmael crying, sends an angel to comfort Hagar, promising a great future for her son.
It's more than just a rescue. It's God reaffirming his promise.
Exactly. Even in the wilderness, when hope feels lost, God sees them. He hears their cries.
It's like suddenly Hagar and Ishmael are center stage in God's story.
Not forgotten, not abandoned. And their story, it's going to unfold in incredible ways.
It makes you think, who is important to God? Where can his grace be found?
Maybe even in the margins. And hardship and rejection. God's still there, working.
And then the well appears just when it feels like all is lost.
God opens Hagar's eyes. There it is.
Not just water. Hope. A sign of God's provision when death felt certain.
It's like, bam, out of nowhere. Life in a barren land. A reminder that even when we feel surrounded by emptiness,
God provides.
He does, in the most unexpected ways.
It makes you wonder if we miss those wells of provision in our own lives, those unexpected bits of strength, support,
Yeah.
appearing right when we need them.
Maybe. It does make you want to pay closer attention to the little miracles, you know?
The everyday things we take for granted. Yeah.
It's like we forget to look beyond what's right in front of us.
To see the amazing in the everyday.
Exactly. That well wasn't just there. It was a turning point for Hagar. Despair becoming hope, you know?
Fear turning into gratitude.
Yeah. And speaking of wells, there's another one in this story, right?
Oh, right. We move on from Hagar to Abraham and Abimelech.
The king of Gerar.
And another well is right at the center of things.
Wells were essential back then. Survival in that region depended on them.
But they also caused a lot of trouble, didn't they?
Oh, for sure. Conflicts over wells were common. And remember, oaths and covenants, that's how agreements and alliances worked back then.
So when Abraham and Abimelech have this dispute.
It wasn't just about the water. It was about honor, respect, keeping the peace.
Wow, so something as basic as water access could turn into a whole feud between leaders?
Absolutely. Resources were scarce and maintaining control was high stakes.
Makes sense. But they
Yeah.
did find a way to resolve it, right?
They did. And this is what fascinates me. Instead of violence or this ongoing feud,
They talked it out.
diplomacy and compromise.
Seems like they understood that getting along was more important than winning. So what did this agreement look like?
Well, first, they exchanged gifts. Common practice back then, showing good faith.
Makes sense.
Then they made a formal agreement about sharing the well and keeping things peaceful. And this all happened at a place that became known as Beersheba.
Beersheba. Doesn't that name mean something about an oath?
It does, well of the oath, or well of the seven.
Seven.
Abraham set aside 7 ewe lambs as a witness that he had dug the well.
Wow, so the lambs were like A living testament to the agreement.
Exactly. A physical symbol of that covenant between Abraham and Abimelech. Imagine that.
It's so visual, we sign contracts, shake hands. But back then, these tangible symbols, they really solidified things. It feels so much more, I don't know, ceremonial,
Yeah.
meaningful.
Oh, for sure. These rituals weren't just for show. It was about making it sacred, showing how serious this agreement was, making sure everyone honored it.
So we've got these two wells, each with a completely different but crucial role. One is about God providing, a mother's hope, survival.
And the other, it's a human agreement, a pact to keep the peace between two communities.
It's like the wells are mirrors, showing us different parts of what it means to be human, our vulnerability, needing something bigger than ourselves.
Our ability to fight and compromise, our desire to connect, to belong.
Amazing how ordinary objects like wells become so full of meaning. Makes you wonder about the hidden symbolism in our own lives,
Definitely. There are stories everywhere, layers of meaning just waiting to be discovered. Like, think about the things in your home, the places you go all the time.
Right. What happened there? What feelings are tied to those spaces?
What agreements, maybe some you didn't even say out loud, have shaped your relationships?
Like, we're all archaeologists of our own lives, digging below the surface to find what's hidden in plain sight. And that brings us back to Hagar and that saved her and Ishmael. We talked about God providing, but what does that well mean specifically for her?
That's a great question, and it deserves a deeper look. For Hagar, it wasn't just survival.
Right. It was a turning point in her story.
She went from feeling like a victim to recognizing her own strength, her resilience.
She'd been cast out, abandoned, facing this uncertain future, but she didn't give up.
Exactly. She held on to hope. She fought for her son. And that, given by God,
Yeah.
it becomes a symbol of her independence, of being empowered.
Wow.
It's the start of a new chapter for her, taking control, making a way for herself and Ishmael, despite everything they've been through.
It's not just about God rescuing her. It's about God giving her the power to be the hero of her own story.
Exactly. It reminds us that even in our worst struggles, we have this inner strength. And sometimes those struggles, those wilderness moments, are what show us what we're truly capable of.
So the well becomes a symbol of resilience. Overcoming those hard times, finding the courage to make a new future, even when it seems impossible.
It's a message that speaks to everyone, especially those who face their own wildernesses. Hagar's story tells us that even in the darkest times, there's always a chance for renewal, for finding that wellspring of strength inside ourselves to rise above whatever we're facing. It really is amazing how this story keeps unfolding, layer by layer. New meanings, new connections.
Faith, family struggles, God providing, the power of agreements, even compromise.
It's why these ancient stories still have so much power,
Totally. They speak to things everyone goes through.
Love, loss, fear, hope. Trying to survive. Finding our place in the world. The details might be different now, but the core stuff,
Yeah.
it's timeless.
It's like holding up a mirror. We might not be wandering in the desert with nothing, but everyone faces tough times, feeling lost, alone.
Exactly. And just like Hagar found strength inside herself, we can too. We can get through those hard times, find a new path.
So powerful. It's like these stories, they don't just entertain. They give us guidance, inspiration.
They do. They make us think about what we believe, what matters to us, how we'd face similar challenges.
So what does it all mean for us today? How can we actually take these ancient stories and use them in our modern lives? What really stands out to you?
For me, it's knowing that even when things are really tough, when we feel alone, forgotten, God's working.
He was for Hagar and Ishmael.
Right. He's there in our struggles, guiding us, comforting us, giving us support in ways we don't expect.
It goes back to trusting God's plan, even when we can't see the whole thing.
Sometimes those times we feel lost, like we're wandering, those actually lead to something better, something we couldn't have planned for ourselves.
It requires faith, doesn't it? Letting go of control, embracing the unknown.
Trusting that even when things feel chaotic, there's this divine order to it all.
It's humbling. We try so hard to make things happen on our own schedule with our own expectations. But what if we surrendered to something bigger? Trusted a wisdom beyond what we can see?
It's a total shift in how we think. Instead of always being in control, we let go. We're open to new possibilities.
We trust that even our struggles have a purpose.
Exactly.
And along with that, keeping our promises. Just like that covenant at Beersheba, marked by that well and the 7 lambs, the promises we make, no matter how big or small, we should keep them.
Absolutely. It shows integrity, we're reliable. It's how we build trust with others.
The world feels so shaky sometimes, so those commitments, those acts of keeping our word, they matter even more.
They do. They bring stability, accountability. We know we can count on each other, even when things change.
A promise to a friend, a commitment to a project, a vow. Our words carry weight. We have to live up to them. It's not just about checking off a box. It's about building a culture of trust, respect, where what we do matches what we say.
Couldn't said it better myself. And one last thing I think this story tells us. Look beyond the surface. Don't miss the importance of the everyday things.
Like those wells. So much meaning packed into them.
The objects in our lives, the places we go, they tell stories. Mark moments in time. Hold our memories.
It's like an invitation to really pay attention, be present, find the meaning in those everyday moments that make up our lives.
To be more mindful, more aware of all the richness around us.
The simple things, the connections we have, all the experiences that shape who we are. It's an incredible tapestry.
We've talked a lot about the well as a symbol of that agreement between Abraham and Abimelech. But I want to leave you with this. What does the well mean for Hagar? Think about her journey, what she needed so desperately.
That's a powerful thought, and a good reminder that these ancient stories have so much to offer. Insights into faith, family resilience, and the importance of keeping our word. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked some new ideas for you and maybe even inspired you to see your own life in a new way.